I'm sorry, it's just the way things unfolded. I tried to explain to my sister. Was this true? I asked, my heart heavy with concern. My sister replied, Zoe, you have to put Zoe first. This isn't the time. As I grasped the gravity of the situation, I raised my hand to signal to both of them, feeling a hollowness within me. I had never been so heartless before, and I had never wanted to experience anything like this in my life. Yet, because of the poor choices made by my husband and sister, I was left with a haunting memory that I would never be able to forget. They would never be forgiven for this. It all began with a promise I had made to pick up my niece, Zoe, from preschool that day. My sister had pressured me into it once again. Could you please pick up Zoe tomorrow? She had asked. Why are you always in such a hurry? You're a housewife after all. You have plenty of time. That's not the point, I retorted. I could hear my niece coughing on the other end of the line. Is Zoe sick? No, she's fine, my sister assured me. She was just coughing. She's fine. Anyway, can you do me a favor? Could you just keep her for a while? For how long? I inquired. A week, my sister replied casually. What? I protested. I can't. Well, then I'll have to leave Zoe at the preschool, my sister threatened. If no one comes to pick her up, she'll stay there. I reluctantly agreed, my thoughts centered on my niece. But then I received a call from the preschool much earlier than I had anticipated, and they informed me that they had tried calling my sister, who was listed as an emergency contact, multiple times without success. The doctor's call was a devastating shock. My niece, who had only had a slight fever that day, had lost consciousness and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. I raced to the hospital upon receiving the call, but tragically it was already too late. My husband and I had been married for 6 years without any children. We had begun family planning and explored fertility treatments soon after our marriage, but luck had not been on our side. 2 years ago, my sister had a baby, but her marriage ended in divorce shortly after. Since then, she had frequently urged me to care for her child whenever possible, stating that it would serve as good practice for when I eventually had a child of my own. I had mixed feelings about this arrangement, but my niece was an affectionate and sweet child, so I had agreed to care for her again. One day, I informed my husband that I would be taking care of my niece once more. I'll be looking after her tomorrow. Can I count on your help? I asked. Tomorrow? Well, you see, I have an urgent work matter to deal with. I have to fly out early tomorrow morning for a business trip, he replied. Are you okay with that? After some consideration, I said, yes, I understand. I've known the client for a long time, and it won't affect our contract. I handle sales, so it's important that I go myself. All right, please take care. Do you think you'll manage on your own? If it becomes too difficult, I can ask my parents to help, he offered. I'll be fine, thank you. Have a safe trip, I replied. At that moment, I thought I was merely unlucky. You see, my niece had formed a strong attachment to my husband. The last time I took care of her, she had cried at night, and it had been a challenging experience for me. My husband cradled my niece in his arms, offering her reassurance, and I had confidence that he would be there if anything happened while I was at work. It's only natural to prioritize work, and I was mentally prepared for the exhaustion that awaited me. However, the following day, I received a distressing call from the preschool. I rushed to the hospital to find my niece's fragile body connected to a web of tubes. She's unconscious. I asked in disbelief. The preschool teachers were visibly upset, and the director couldn't hide her criticism. You're really her mother's sister, right? She questioned. Yes, I am, I replied with a heavy heart. I've been trying to reach my sister, but I can't. We've also called her workplace, and they said she's on vacation. Where is your sister now? The director inquired. She's overseas, I answered. The director's eyes widened as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. She proceeded to share the details of her conversation with my sister. Apparently, when my niece had visited the preschool, her face had been flushed. Upon checking the daily temperature record, which was supposed to be maintained at home, they found it blank. The preschool had a policy of not admitting children with incomplete health records. So they had taken her temperature that morning, and it had registered at 37.8 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, the preschool couldn't accept a child with a fever above 37.5 degrees Celsius. The director had advised my sister to take the child home, to which my sister had responded that my niece usually had a slightly elevated temperature, so there shouldn't be any problem. Ignoring the teacher's attempts to intervene, my sister left the preschool that day. Despite several attempts to contact her, they couldn't reach her, so they called our parents. However, our parents were working and unavailable during the day. Furthermore, the only emergency contact information provided was that of my sister. The teachers were left in a difficult situation, so they dug up an old emergency contact number from a year ago, which happened to be mine. They called me, expressing their regret for the tragic turn of events. The principal's voice quivered as she spoke, and I could see tears welling up in her eyes. We both gazed at my niece, who lay unconscious. "I'm so sorry," I muttered, my heart heavy with sorrow. I reassured the director and the chaperone and sent them back to the school. Then, I made frantic attempts to contact my sister, but her phone was disconnected. I called her countless times, but she never answered. Meanwhile, my parents, whom I had called, rushed to the hospital, trying to maintain hope. My mom repeatedly told herself, "It's okay, Zoe's going to be okay." However, despite the treatment provided at the hospital, my niece's condition continued to deteriorate. All the while, I persisted in my attempts to reach my sister. 2 agonizing days later, the little life was lost, and there was no hope of recovery. A child of just 2 years old who departed this world without the warmth of a mother's touch, leaving us all to grapple with the unimaginable cruelty of fate. Tears streamed down my face as I touched her cold, lifeless body. Why hadn't I asked my sister where she was going? Why hadn't I stopped her? I couldn't help but blame myself for what had transpired. "It's not your fault," my mother whispered softly to me, her own eyes brimming with tears. Desperate to share the devastating news with my husband, I tried repeatedly to reach him, but my calls went unanswered. Time seemed to both crawl and fly as I grappled with despair. Eventually, I had to proceed with my niece's funeral without any word from my sister, who had indicated she was returning from her trip. I had my phone ready, hoping to receive her call as soon as she reached out. While the monks chanted sutras at the funeral, my phone vibrated. I picked it up, expecting to hear from her. "Hello. Thank you so much for taking care of Zoe." Her voice came through the line. "I just landed at the airport and I'm on my way home. What would you like as a souvenir?" I struggled to hold back my emotions. "For you? What? What?" I stammered. "I can't hear you. What are you doing?" The singing halted abruptly at the sound of my voice. "Huh? What are you so mad about?" She responded, seemingly oblivious. You took the life of a child." "Huh? Zoe, she died?" I cried out, my voice breaking. "Do you have any idea how lonely she was?" "Oh no," my sister replied, her tone suddenly shifting. "It's not funny, is it?" "It's not funny," I choked out. "None of us are laughing." I couldn't contain the overwhelming rush of emotions that consumed me. I took several deep breaths to regain my composure. "I'm in the middle of Zoe's funeral," I said sternly, "so get back here as soon as you can." With that, I ended the call, my heart heavy with frustration. I turned to the monk and apologized for interrupting the chanting, and he placed a gentle hand on my head. After the funeral, as I prepared to leave for the crematorium, my sister arrived out of breath. Surprisingly, my husband was with her. It was hard to believe, right? My sister burst into tears at the sight of my niece, but I couldn't fathom the reason behind her arrival. My husband stood there, dumbfounded behind my sister. The relatives looked at her with cold glances, but no one cast blame upon her, perhaps out of respect for Zoe. I refrained from speaking to either my sister or my husband until after the cremation. It felt as though Zoe had been waiting for her mother. After the cremation, we returned to my parents' house, where my sister faced a barrage of criticism from my parents. I listened in silence until my eyes fell upon their suitcases. Why were their suitcases in the same place? What caught my attention was a sticker that the airline had placed on the suitcase's handle. Both of them had returned from the same airport. My sister remained silent, while my husband finally spoke up, saying, "I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. I didn't mean it that way." I turned to my sister, my emotions running high. "Is this true?" I asked her. "Then what?" "This isn't the time," I continued, my voice trembling. "Zoe, you have to put Zoe first." As I raised my hand to both of them, it wasn't out of anger over any potential infidelity. It was because I couldn't bear their behavior when it came to my niece. "Stop your tears," I implored them. "You have no right to cry. I called you over 100 times. How could you not even consider that something might have happened to your own child? While the two of you were indulging in your foolish affair, Zoe was suffering and dying. Your sins are unforgivable, and you should suffer a slow, painful fate. I'm sorry, but do you think this is your penance for Zoe? Do you believe you're being honest? But you're equally guilty. You ignored my calls too. You let my niece die, and you bear responsibility for that as well. Rot in hell. My parents didn't stop me. Don't you dare show your faces here again. You are no longer my daughter. I cannot forgive you. Leave this place." "Why? Why am I the only one to blame?" My sister left without the remains of my niece. We'll talk about our divorce later. He nodded in silence. He must have been consumed by guilt. He relinquished everything we owned together, and alimony was paid in full. We divorced after that. But do you think this is redemption for your sins? Your guilt will never leave you, and my sister and my husband are headed to prison. The authorities charged them with child abuse. My sister fought her case with a court-appointed lawyer, but no one sided with her. My parents and I were put on trial, but we told the truth. As a result, my sister received a 5-year prison sentence, while my husband's case was swiftly settled, resulting in a 2-year jail term. 5 years and 2 years. Can a person's life be compensated for with only 7 years? I feel so empty. These two will never see the light of day. 6 years have passed since then. I got married again and gave birth to my child. I'll never forget my niece, but it's my child who has helped heal my wounds. I want to be a mother who is always there for my child. They say sin never truly disappears. They will carry it with them for the rest of their lives. Do they deserve it? No, it's still not enough. Human life is precious.